We've all been there. It's a weekend night and you're alone at your house bored, trying to find anything to distract yourself. So to flee of this discomfort, you get an urge to type in that infamous website to chase that short-lived pleasurable escape, just to get hit again with an overwhelming pain of solitude. I know we have all been there at some point in our lives. Maybe this is you every day or every week, and you are not alone. Cigna, a health insurance company, did a national survey back in 2019 that found 61% of Americans reported feeling alone. And if we're being honest, that has probably increased since the pandemic. But if you were to pair that with another survey back in 2008 that reports that men under 30 who haven't had sex in the past year has tripled to 28%, and that number only increases to rise. We just simply now live in a time where the average man is alone without getting his sexual needs met. And due to that, men are averse to being alone and feeling alone, and they'll do anything to try to forget their own solitude. So they depend on these sexual outlets like porn and masturbation. Like, fellas, 20% of mobile searches are for pornography. Hopefully you are starting to see how the age of loneliness is creating a whole new generation of sex addicts. More men than ever are reconditioning their neural pathways to actively seek sexual pleasure online or even with sex workers because it's easy and readily available. And creating this dependency of all these sexual vices that can be abused whenever those feelings of loneliness creep back in creates a trap. They just try to find this short-term relief, just like a shot of insulin, right? Just to feel something, right? Back when I was living in college, I really had no incentive to improve my social or dating life. That would bring me discomfort, right? That would bring me pain. And that was the exact thing that I was conditioning myself to escape. And I found myself falling into the deadly trap most men experience today. So what is the trap? I think it's better to show you a visual representation about what this deadly addictive cycle looks like for a lot of guys. So it all starts with a pain agent. Now, this pain agent can be stress, it can be boredom, and most potently, it can be loneliness or isolation. And that loneliness, that isolation, leads guys to go and act out. People are naturally risk averse. People do not like pain. They'll do anything to get out of that pain. So what's a way to get out of that pain? Well, you can go find quick relief from that by, a very pleasurable, sexual experience. And not only will you find relief from that pain agent, but you're going to get a sexual release on top of that gives you all this serotonin, dopamine, and makes you feel really, really good. But the problem is, since you're acting out to escape this pain agent, you're going to feel down again once that whole high comes crashing down, right? You didn't get your problem solved. The pain agent is still there. That never went away. You might have got a quick fix of feeling of intimacy, feeling of, escape from that isolation and loneliness, but you still didn't get it solved. So you feel down. Oftentimes you feel worse than you were beforehand because now you're mixing that pain agent with shame, guilt, regret, frustration because you're still stuck in this process doing these things that you shouldn't be doing. And because of that, you feel stuck with the same problem. You didn't get anything else solved, and it's demotivating. When you see the cycle continue time after time after time and time again, it leaves you with less and less incentive to actually change, to actually fix the problem that is leading this whole entire cycle to continue. So you feel stuck with the same problem, you're still sitting in pain, and it's probably been intensified because of the shame, guilt, and regret of going and acting out, which all leads back to another pain agent of isolation, loneliness, feeling of frustration, sexual frustration, stress, whatever, and the whole thing continues. Now, this cycle can be a day, it can be a week, it can be a month. The duration doesn't really matter. This concept holds true to each and every single person. And this is the deadly trap, right? This is something that a lot of guys fall into. And they try to escape the bad feelings. They try to escape the feelings of being stuck by repeating it and repeating it and repeating it Because it's easier to double down on that behavior than it is to actually fix it and get just another short-term high. It's deadly. It's deadly. But I'm going to show you how to actually improve. This trap is so deadly because it's a slippery slope. The longer this goes on, the less incentive you have to actually commit to change in the long run. And from coaching dozens of men and talking to hundreds of guys with this issue, I found that this cycle continues until the man reaches a breaking point. He reaches his all-time low, and that pain is so extreme that he needs to create some separation. But after a week or after a month goes by, he just can't repress his sexual desires anymore. It's tough to do that. He's fighting against his body. So he finds himself falling back into the same trap. And if you relate to this and you're watching this and going like, man, this guy's describing everything I'm going through, I want to give you some hope. I want to conquer this. Like, I've personally done it and I've seen so many guys do it. This is definitely possible no matter how far down that slippery slope you are. So what can you do about this? Well, you need the right process. So let me explain that. Let's dive in. The first step is understanding that loneliness enables compulsive sexual behavior due to it being a pain agent, like I explained earlier, and also being a time to act out. For example, some men might just have a family and they have kids, so they don't necessarily feel alone. But when they're alone at night and there's no one really around, or no one will know that they're going to go onto a dirty website or go and act out in a sexual way, that creates an opportunity for them to give into their compulsive sexual behavior. So for that guy, he's not necessarily prone to being alone and that have it be a pain agent that promotes him to go and act out. It's more so of a problem time, an opportunity for him to act out. And on the other hand, there's many more guys that being alone is more so a pain agent. That constant pain of repressing your sexual desires mixed with just not getting your sexual needs met, mixed with just not seeing a future with you, an abundant social life, an abundant dating life, leaves these guys itching for a pleasurable escape. So once you can see which camp you're in, you can now create a game plan. So half of the solution is just straight up creating structure and routine around the times that you are alone, and the other half is being super intentional about how you deal with urges that are inevitable. Because if you can attack this thing from two fronts, dealing with the loneliness, dealing with the isolation, creating a game plan around that, and also being able to deal with the urges when they do pop up, you're attacking this thing on two fronts. Like, you get to fix the boredom, the loneliness that you might feel in the evening, and you can do that just by having a catalog of things that you can do during those times and create structure and plan for those evenings. And if you're to deal with, the fighting and the repressing of urges and dealing with them by either changing your environment or at least putting yourself in a better headspace, you're going to be able to conquer the sex addiction that's keeping you stuck because you're being smart about it. Right? It just comes down to that and taking action on those two paths. Because all staying clean comes down to framework around these urges. Instead of using it as a way to avoid pain, right? You can say, okay, I'm getting an urge right now. I understand I have this urge because I feel lonely and I want an intimate connection. Therefore, I want to go out and act out with porn, masturbation, sex workers. And since what my body really wants is that connection and intimacy, it doesn't really want me to go and compulsively act out. That's not what my body really wants. And since that's not what my body really wants, I'm not going to go and do that. That's going to lead to pain. Like, this urge is just a temporary emotion, like nothing more, nothing less. And it will pass by. And this framework is probably the exact opposite of what you've been using for some of you, probably for years. You probably get an urge, you tense up, you try to fight it off or repress it, which is way more painful and requires extreme amounts of willpower to sustain, and it just doesn't work. It makes it worse. You're fighting your emotions, you're fighting the feelings your body's giving you. You're working against yourself. So coming from that framework of accepting the way you feel, say, okay, I feel this urge right now, And understanding why it's happening allows you to regain control rather than just fighting it off or even falling into a trance and just acting out. You see, being alone on this journey is tough. It keeps you in the shadows, which is like the exact thing you want to avoid. Because no one succeeds in a vacuum. No one succeeds alone with this problem. And bringing it to the light only accelerates growth. And since you've gotten this far into the video, and obviously you're committed to change and learning something new, and you resonate with me and my teachings, and you want to just finally conquer your sex addiction once and for all, I want to invite you to book a call with me personally to apply for the Recovery Blueprint program, where you can work with me so you don't have to struggle with this alone and just go 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, constantly having setbacks, constantly repressing your sexuality, and just reach the point where you can finally achieve freedom. So reach out and get some help so you can finally live in alignment with the man that you want to be most. Someone who is clean, someone who is pure, someone who's not living this double shady life that's keeping you isolated and alone, even if you're not. And with that said, like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all boys in the next one. Peace.